first of all, I just want to say I am so excited to be sharing this stage with you. Like some in this room, you singularly inspired me to pursue broadcast journalism because you allowed people like me to know what was possible. And so I just want to thank you for that.
But Lisa carved her own niche in television news, an extraordinary niche. And I am so thrilled and proud of her because it's very hard to come up with something new and different and meaningful. And you never got into tacky news, ever. I did. But but you didn't.
Well, I owe it to you. And before we get into your storied career and the impact that you've had on Asian Americans, you just got an Instagram recently.
Yep.
And I saw something that I just have to ask you about. Is it true you've always done your own hair and makeup?
Yeah, I always did my own hair because I think I know my hair better than anybody does. I've been living with it for 78 years, and I really do know how to do my hair.
Well, I asked you this because I wonder if it's because people didn't know how to do Asian faces
probably
years ago.
Well, but makeup, I came up with this harebrained idea of doing an extra line because I don't have a line. Americans have a lid. But damn it, Chinese people don't always have a lid. And so I had to do something about it. So my sister and I came up with this, you have a lid. And I came up with
Yes, there are surgeries for it now.
That's true.
But I have not engaged.
No. And I don't, both my husband and I have not had any work. The only thing we do is we color our hair. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. But anyway.
You didn't think this was going to go this way, right?
So I do, I will not step out of, the sunlight. I don't go outside of my apartment or home or whatever without my makeup because I look really scary. But when I take my makeup off at night, hi, Connie. When I take my makeup off at night, I say to my husband, you want to see something really scary?
You didn't know this was going to be the Connie Chung comedy show tonight.
But the fact is that, but I would go, when I was going on the air, the harsh lighting, there would be these makeup people who would make me look not tired. It was amazing.
Well, it's impressive what you've done on your own. And Connie, the reason why I and so many in this room fell in love with you was not just because you were the only Asian American on a national stage. You were and are so bold and so fearless, and you would barge into rooms, stick microphones in people's faces, and ask the tough questions. But you weren't always that way.
No.
To the contrary.
Yeah.
Give us a sense of what your upbringing was like, and what was Connie like before she became Connie Chung Newswoman?
I grew up with 4 older sisters who were bossy as heck. They always told me what to do, what to say. They were just insufferably bossy, really, seriously. And I couldn't get a word in edgewise, so I didn't, ever. And they'd say, what do you want? We'd go to a drugstore lunch counter. What do you want? What do you want? What do you want? And I was afraid to say, and they'd give her a Coke. It was just, they were so out there that it really wasn't until I went to school, but I was still very shy, very, very shy. I would not leave my mother's skirt. Now I want to go home. But eventually...
That is shocking, isn't it?
And I wouldn't raise my hand. I was too afraid to speak. And I went through all the things that Asians do, which is these derogatory comments like, can you see the ceiling and the floor because your eyes are so slanted? It just kind of, yeah, I can. So, I mean, what do you say? Yeah, I can. So but finally, as I went to school, I built up some confidence, and my sisters got married and moved out, and I was like, whoa, here we go, I can come out.
Well, you say that your father raised you as the son that he never had because you grew up with 4 sisters. Do you think that prepared you for what was to come?
It was a sort of subconscious sort of, what he did was, I had already gotten into the news business, and he said, he wrote me a letter, and it was something to the effect that maybe you could carry on the name Chung the way boys do. And I thought, he was intimating that I could be the son that my parents never had. And what the point is that my parents were born and raised in China, very traditional parents. My mother was born in 1911, my father was born in 1909. They came from extremely traditional families, and my mother's feet were bound, and their marriage was arranged. They were engaged at ages 12 and 14, and then they were married at 17 and 19, and had never seen each other before. So their marriage was not one of love, not a love marriage. It was an arranged marriage. So then they had 9 children in China, 5 of whom died as infants. So infant mortality was quite high back then.
Some were boys, right, Connie?
Yes.
Some passed away. 3
were boys, and that's terrible news for not only the parents but the grandparents, especially the grandparents. And so my father and mother were without a son, the coveted son. I was born the 10th in the United States. They came in 1945, and I was born in 46. So I was yet another girl. But I think I subconsciously, and my father kind of gave me that mission to be the son they never had. I took it seriously because I was heavy into filial piety. I was a good Chinese starter. So I think I believed it in my head. Although during my career, it wasn't as if it were omnipresent in my mind. It's just that ultimately, I think that's where I was thinking.
Well, as the only one of your parents' children who was born in the United States, how was your life different from the lives of your siblings?
My sisters, since they were born in China, wanted to be very American. And I, not being born in China, wanted to be more Chinese. So it was a wacky, a wacky sort of situation. Seriously, I wanted to be one of them. And they wanted to be more Americanized. But the fact is that we grew up with both cultures. Like, for instance, we listened to Frank Sinatra and Doris Day, but we also went to Chinese opera. We ate Chinese food that my mother cooked, but we had a neighbor who taught my mother and my oldest sister how to make meatloaf, and it was great meatloaf, right, Joanna? Meatloaf and spaghetti and meatballs and PB&Js and tuna fish, and it was roast beef. Remember when Bill, your dad, used to make roast beef, and it was such a combination. We were, while my sisters were trying to learn how to be totally Americanized, I was kind of clinging to the Chinese thing.
Well, in the way that I had Connie to aspire to, you didn't have a Connie. No. So how did this shy young woman who used to cling to her mother's leg decide to pursue broadcast journalism?
I actually just happened to have gotten a job on Capitol Hill as an intern for a congressman who actually was corrupt. And he, what a surprise, right? He got out before they got him. But he was a former newspaper man, and he got me interested in writing. But what I really noticed were the reporters scrambling around Capitol Hill, asking impertinent questions of members of Congress. And since I grew up in Washington and grew up on the Washington Post and what was called then the Evening Star, it was an afternoon newspaper, and my father always made it a point for us to sit down and watch Walter Cronkite. You know, good evening, this is Walter Cronkite. And I was like, so it was appointment television. We'd sit down and watch. And it was phenomenally good because he was dependable, credible, honest, totally fair, and he wasn't insufferable like many anchormen I have known and worked with.
We'll get to that in a little bit.
Okay. So, you know, then I decided that's what I'm going to do. And when I decided that, Lisa, I was driven. I don't know, I was intoxicated with the news business and wanting to be a reporter. So I dove in.
You say in the book that you and people like Leslie Stahl were affirmative action hires.
Yes.
Can you talk about that?
Right about the late 60s, early 70s, the Civil Rights Law created the Equal Employment Opportunities Commission. And grievances could be, complaints could go to the Equal Employment Opportunities Commission. So Maury's sister, Lynn Povich, she worked at Newsweek, and she was hired, just like all the other women, as a researcher. They could never be hired as writers, reporters, editors, anything but researchers. And researchers were doing a lot of the work. They were writing, and they would give it to some guy, and he would, you know, take credit for it. And it was outrageous and criminal. So they met in the ladies' room, the only place where they could meet privately. Narc, narc. And they actually plotted to file a class action lawsuit. They won. And Lynn is such a do you know Lynn? No, you don't. She's such a lovely person. She, despite this lawsuit, she became the first woman editor of Newsweek. So she rocked right from the beginning. I happened to be working at a local station in Washington, D.C., and there was a heavy push to hire women and minorities. The Washington bureau chief was a man named Bill Small. He could see the writing on the wall, that it was pretty important to hire women. I happened to be working for a local station at the time, and I was a reporter after I relentlessly begged the news director to make me a reporter. And there was a story about unsanitary conditions at this Tony French restaurant in Washington, D.C. It was called Le Provençal. And lo and behold, Bill Small, the Washington bureau chief of CBS News, which was the Tiffany network, was having lunch there. He was eating there. And I barged into the restaurant, demand to see the owner, to explain himself of how he could be cited for unsanitary conditions. The Bill Small saw me and gave me his card. And he said, call me. So I waited. I figured, let's see, how long will it take him to finish eating lunch? And then how would he get back to the office? And then he said, after I got back to the office, 20 minutes later, she calls. And he said, I gave her the job. And so it's just being obnoxious and aggressive.
But where did that come from, Connie? I mean, Do you ever think about what could have possibly possessed you to, frankly, be so aggressive in your approach?
I really wonder about that. But now, when I'm 78, I'm thinking, because my husband always tells me I have a look, and I know I have a resting bitch face. So I think, even though I didn't want anybody to ever call me a B word or diva or anything like that, I think in my heart, I'm a bitch. Or, Maury actually thinks that when I get angry or something, he doesn't want to have anything to do with me, because I hold grudges. I do. I mean, it's not pretty. It's not nice.
Did you see those eyes at me? I hold grudges. I will not cross you.
Lisa, never you. Seriously.
Thank you.
You're amazing. I came to your wedding. I love you. And she's got this incredibly handsome, tall husband. I mean, seriously, Paul he's rocking. And then she's got these gorgeous 2 daughters. Her older daughter is like, how old is she?
She's 11.
She's taller than I am. But I'm so short,
So,
but Lisa, I used to
and
be
I
taller,
digress.
and I
you
would
used
wear,
to be taller.
Yeah, I was 5'3.5", and then don't forget the hat. And I would wear 4-inch heels, and I ruined my feet. So now I can only wear sneakers, and I come up to Maury's navel.
Well, your presence is exceedingly tall, Connie.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, so you get hired and you start working in news, and there are these iconic photos of you amidst the sea of men. And there are multiple photos depicting you in these scenarios. What were you thinking in those environments?
Do you know, I didn't even think about it. That photo that we're talking about, and you're just going to have to buy the book. Or you have the book. If you look on the back cover, you can see the sea of men, the photo. And you don't have one. Oh, what a pity. Oh, thank you. Who's your friend? You don't know him, do you, Andrea? No, you should. He's kind of cute.
That's my French A. He's not on your team, though, but...
Anyway. What?
Just being honest.
What's your name? Jeff.
Jay. Yeah.
Meet Andrea.
So we were talking about the photo, those iconic photos of you amidst the sea of men.
On the back, yeah. And this Capitol Hill photographer, his name is Dev O'Neill. He actually gave me that photo because he saw me and I look like I've had it, I just, and I don't remember feeling that way unless I was tired or whatever, and I was very often tired. But it became iconic. It became the woman who put it on either Facebook or Twitter or something. Her name was Vivian. She's Vladimir Druthers' wife. Yeah. It's in the book, but I'm so old I can't remember. I left my memory on I-95. It's terrible. But anyway, she put it on social media, and it became what she called #mood, which means I have so been there. And every woman knows many situations in which we walk into a room and we're among men. And it's... we don't hate it. It's just that it's a feeling that we get that we're alone.
Do you think, when you think back on those years, that you felt you needed to work harder to have legitimacy amongst this sea of men.
Absolutely. I think every day was a test, and I had to prove myself. So I would work harder and try and be tougher, try and be part of the boys' club by being just as tough, if not tougher than they were. And in the beginning, there was a lot of hazing. You know, you're not smart enough, you're not good enough, you're not a good writer, you're stupid. Did you do this? Did you do that? And if I didn't, I was excoriated for it. So it's I think in the beginning it was challenging because I was the only skirt in the room. And, you know, but I was undaunted. I don't know why. I was maybe too young to know that I should be a coward. I mean, that I should cower to their hazing. But for some reason, I didn't. I tried to get them before they got me. Seriously, I did. Which was, I don't really recommend that, but if I could see a sexist or a racist remark, I would bop them, you know, just lob one at them before they could lob it at me. And they'd be so shocked that I, you know, had a potty mouth too. And I would lay one on them, and here I was, you know, I looked like a lotus blossom. And they're thinking, my God, did you hear those words come out of her mouth? And I kind of thought it was fun, you know, because they were left rather speechless. And I loved having them speechless.
But it was almost a conscious effort for you, right, Connie? I mean, you really set out to almost adopt a male persona.
Well, I didn't know how to navigate this world. And subconsciously, I just said, well, you know, I'll think of myself as one of them. Because I'd look around the room and I'd see a bunch of white men. And I thought, you know, I can't see me. So I thought, well, I'll be one of them. And so I would walk into a room with bravado and try and own the room. I'd demand respect because men could command respect just by virtue of being a man. And I would kind of lower my voice to get it, not so high, you know. It's very easy for women when they shout, that the voice goes up. So I tried to speak very quietly and low and sound more like Walter Cronkite.
But you also worked harder than anybody out there. I mean, you write about just the unbelievable hours that you were maintaining.
When I was at NBC, it was pretty ridiculous because I wanted to go back to the network, and so I created this insane schedule for myself. You know, one of the the only woman that I knew who worked in management said to me one time, you have to tell your boss what you want. Because she said, I'm in management. I don't know what all the employees want. You have to tell the boss. And I thought, you know, no man gave me that kind of advice, and I thought that was wonderful advice. So I marched into NBC, and I said, this is what I want to do. And it worked. It's amazing. You know, you can say, this is what I want. But you don't have to pound the table and, you know, be demanding. You just, otherwise I'm not going to take your job. You know, if I don't get these things, I'm going somewhere else.
You know, when I started in this business in the 90s, I can't tell you how many times male executives would ask to meet me for dinner to talk about things later on,
yeah.
right? How did you deal with those sexual advances when you were on the campaign trail and among some of the most reputable leaders in this country?
You mean presidential candidates? Well, you know what I came to realize very quickly is that they are just men. They have pimples and blemishes just like all of us. They are ordinary men who put their pants on one leg at a time. And I think once I saw how all their vulnerabilities up close and personal in many ways, because we would see them day after day after day, I realized they just simply are men who have the audacity to believe that they could run the country. And, and so this sort of power mentality, takes over for them. And they believe, much like anchormen often believe, that they have sexual prowess. And they have these delusions. And I'm looking at them and saying, are you kidding?
But did you ever have the desire to divulge that information? I mean, this could be pretty damning.
Sure.
For these high-ranking people.
Yes. And, a sort of practice started way back. I mean, Eisenhower was, I think, boffing his driver. Yeah, I think he was having an affair with his driver. JFK, LBJ, all protected by male reporters, as part of, we don't talk about that. And then it continues with Clinton and Trump, and these men are utterly ridiculous. They actually believe that because of the office they hold, that they have the power. They have the power, which is power harassment, essentially. And actually, you know what? Remember when Gary Hart was running for president? I think it was 1984, and he dared the press to follow him because there were rumors that he was having a dalliance of some sort. And when it was discovered that actually I think it was Miami Herald or Miami newspaper actually had already started following him, and they caught him with his girlfriend in his townhouse in Washington. Later, Maury and I were in the Bahamas, I think, and this guy who owned a boat, or he was the captain of a boat, he came up to me and said, I was parked right next to a boat in which Gary Hart and Donna Rice were canoodling, and it was called Monkey Business. And he said, and I thought about calling you and telling you about it. I missed an incredible story. He didn't call me.
But Connie, did you have confidants in people that you could confide in during this time?
Actually, only when I started dating Maury. We slow walked our relationship and our marriage for 7 long years. Amy, how old were you when we started dating? Amy's my daughter. And she's, how old were you, do you think? You were 14, 12? 12.
12.
12?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Amy used to say, when are you getting married? And we just couldn't come to the net. We're both scared. He had been married before. I had never been married before. And
But he became your confidant.
He did. He was always my support beam, my foundation, my consigliere. Because when I'd come home and say, with the resting bitch face, he'd say, what happened now? And I'd tell him, you know what this lady said to me? You know what he said? And he said, don't take him seriously. And he'd say, don't take your critics seriously. Take your work seriously, and don't take yourself seriously. And that was his mantra. And I remember that always. But I could still get worked up by something that somebody did or said. But he was always there, always there. And even now, when in writing this book, you know, he would keep going, you know, keep going. And I'd say, I can't do this anymore. It's hard. And he'd say, no, you got to get it down. Get it down. I'm so grateful.
What was hard for you, Connie? The actual writing of the book, or recounting some of the things that you experienced?
A little of both. I found it very hard to write it because my editor told me that I was just providing facts. And I said, but that's what I do, you know? And she said, no, this is a memoir. You have to tell how you feel. And I'm thinking, I've never told anybody how I feel, because in news, you don't do that. Yeah, you bury your feelings. And I liked being wishy-washy, so I didn't feel the need to, you know, pour my heart out. So I actually asked Maury, he's a voracious reader. Yes, I know you know that he's been determining the paternity of every child in America. And you think that his vocabulary consists of, you are the father and you are not the father. But I can assure you, he has a much wider vocabulary.
Intellectual.
He happens to be a voracious reader. He's a political buff and a history buff. And so I asked my voracious reader husband, what was your favorite memoir? And he said, Personal History by Katharine Graham. She was the publisher of the Washington Post during the tumultuous days of the Pentagon Papers and Watergate. And she suffered incredible sexism as a lone female publisher. But throughout her book, she was never woe is me. She was never crying in her soup. And I was rooting for her all the way up to the end. And I decided that's the kind of book that I want to write. I don't want to, because there's no crying in baseball, you know? Tom Hanks is right. Remember in A League of Their Own? No crying in baseball. Well, I always felt there was no crying in news. So I wrote it with that in mind, that I would not go boo-hoo-hoo all the way home. So that was my approach. And I tried to include my feelings, but not cry about it. So it was a fine line, trying to write about the things that were not good news to me. But then I felt that my journey was very much the meant to be.
Well, let's take you down an emotional road.
Okay.
1993. You get the job of your dreams as the co-anchor of the CBS Evening News, alongside Dan Rather. The second woman in history to anchor an evening newscast, the first Asian American ever to do so. But it also turned out to be a nightmare. Can you talk about those feelings when you first got the job, and kind of give us a window into what transpired that ultimately led to your firing?
Yeah, it was my dream job, and I couldn't have been happier. I had always, wanted to be Walter Cronkite, but I never imagined that I would actually be sitting in half of his chair. So that caused Dan Rather to scooch over a few inches to make room for me. Whoa. He really, he'd owned that chair. Excuse me, sat in that chair for many years.
Do you remember that time, seeing Connie Chung sitting next to Dan Rather? It was every night. It was an event in my home every night. My father would say, Connie, Connie, she's on.
I know that he would not have even wanted to share that chair with a man or a woman or an animal or even a plant. I mean, if you put a plant next to him, he'd say, "Get it out of here." So it wasn't a surprise to me. I mean, I do believe that they held a gun to his head. And but it was a very bumpy ride. It wasn't, I mean, I was thrilled to do stories.
It didn't start out that way, though,
no,
Connie,
not
right?
Really. Not really. I did a number of stories, and I was proud that I was covering serious, hard news, and very thrilled that I was in this coveted position. It was fortunate, if I may, that there were shoulder pads were in, and I had these football shoulder pads, and I was quite the same size that he was. And I had big teased hair, so my head was as big as his was. I'll tell you, they couldn't fit his head in Madison Square Garden. But there were a series of stories that turned out to be not good for my reputation or my career. And at the end of the day, I was dumped. And I could see it coming.
But even in the beginning, you were sent to cover the less serious stories.
Yes.
And the headline news stories were always reserved for Dan.
Well, primarily, I was management tapped my woman's side and Chinese side. They, I was kind of a double dose of dutiful, and so when Tanya Harding and Nancy Kerrigan were going to the Olympics in 1994 in Lillehammer, they said the management said, "Dan's not going to touch that story, and 60 Minutes guys are not touching that story. You go." And off I go to Portland, to the Clackamas Mall in the Happy Valley, and here I am at a skating rink in a shopping mall, and everybody is there from countries all over the world. I mean, Japan, Australia. The venerable New York Times were right standing next to the National Enquirer. And so the world was there watching. And Tanya is skating in this rink that's several feet down from a railing. And I'm saying, Tanya, can you come talk to me? And I'm thinking to myself, would Walter Cronkite be going, Tanya, come talk to Uncle Walter? And I said to myself, hell no. And I wanted to get out of there and tell management, no. But I just couldn't do it because CBS had bought the Olympics and were depending on the Olympics to boost ratings in prime time, because that's what Olympics do. That's what NBC did year after year after year. And it helped boost their ratings. And then it was just, it was very difficult to get over that because my critics were saying, she just wants to do fluff, And it was very hard to...
Wasn't there a moment when Dan Rather told you should be reading up on the news?
Yeah, actually it was the first day when well, there were two things. The very first day our co-anchorship was announced, he said, let's have a cup of coffee. And I was wondering, what's he going to say? And he said, now you're going to have to start reading the newspaper. Whoa. And all I could think of was, do you remember the movie All About Eve, or you're too young? All About Eve. But Laurie and Susan, you remember it, because you're as old, or maybe you're older than I am. Susan, Laurie's taking it.
We're a day
You are.
She's older.
So I thought of this movie that Bette Davis was in, and she was being replaced by a younger woman, right? And she was going to fight it. And so she's walking up the stairs, and she said, "Fasten your seatbelt. It's going to be a bumpy ride." And I thought, yeah, really a bumpy ride. And it was. So it was, it was what it was. And I enjoyed the times that I was covering serious stories and that I did well, but there were bad times too.
Have you spoken with Dan Rather since the book has come out?
Oh no, not since I.
You haven't exactly been shy about.
Well, finally, but see, I haven't talked about anything for about 20 years, I'm sure everybody thought I was 6 feet under. So I'm like rising from the dead. And for the first time I started to, I've talked about it. I did see him after I was fired. It was when Maury, my husband, was president of the National Academy of Arts and Sciences in New York, the New York chapter. And they were presenting Dan Rather with an award. And he said, "Why don't you present it to him?" And I said, "Not a chance." And he said, "Oh, come on, it'll be good." And it's like, "Come on, Connie." And so I said, okay. So
You did it.
Yeah, I did it. And afterwards he was so thrilled, he picked me up off the ground, and my feet were dangling, and I was like, "Put me down." It was, yeah. And then I saw him again on a train, an Amtrak train, Acela, from New York to either Baltimore or Washington, and and he said, "You have a minute? Let's talk." And I thought, oh boy, what's he gonna say? It's like, okay. And we sit down.
This wasn't in the book, by the way, so I'm just, yes.
And we sit down, and he said, basically, no hard feelings. And I said, okay. Okay. And I was so afraid that someone might have seen us talking, and I thought to myself, well, I'll just tell people we're going to an old people's home for washed up anchors. But that's it.
Well, a few days after your firing from CBS, you actually got some incredibly fortuitous news, some of the best news of your life.
Yeah.
That you were going to become a mother.
Well, you know what, Lisa? It's more, to me, it's more about the baby, not about me. It's not about me, my becoming a mother. It's I finally have someone that I love, and that person loves me back. And it's all about him. It's not about me. After being consumed with my, self-absorbed with my career, I suddenly found that I could pour my love into someone besides Maury, because it's a different kind of love. And so 2 days after I was dumped, we got a call that our adoption was going to come through that we had been working on for 2 years. And Maury was so generous. He had already had 2 gorgeous and wonderful daughters, Susan and Amy. And he said, "I think, you should give me your birth control pills. We're not doing that anymore, and we're going to have a baby." Well, by then I was over 40, and I couldn't snap my fingers. I thought, just like everything else, I would work hard at it. And that sounded really stupid. what I mean is, I could have a baby because I thought, yeah, I can do that, and I couldn't. It's just I had immunity issues, and we now know more about that. That immunity issues can affect. I had miscarriages because any foreign body in my body doesn't know that it's okay with immunity. I mean, that's what immunity issues foster, a confusion within one's body that whatever foreign substance comes in is okay or not okay. So here we are. After I was dumped, I was offered another job, but it was so easy to say, kiss it goodbye, because I knew that Matthew was going to be our son, and he was going to be born very soon. When we had him in our arms, I actually stayed at Andrea's house in California to pick him up. And Maury and I were there, and he was less than a day old, which was extraordinary. And I remember when I called you, she was in Paris at the time with her husband and Jenny. Were you? No, you didn't have Jenny yet. You had Jenny? Okay. And I said to Andrea, his poop looks really weird. I had no idea that newborns have this. I actually know a lot about babies, and because I used to babysit for Joanna, my niece Joanna.
You've talked about how both you and Barbara Walters forgot to have kids.
She apparently, she doesn't put it that way, or she did not put it that way. I do. I forgot to get married, and then I forgot to have a baby. Barbara and I had a lot in common. We were both the breadwinners in our families. Her father's nightclubs tanked, and she became she was the breadwinner. She supported her parents and her disabled sister. My father had a minor heart attack when I was in my mid-20s, and from that moment on, I was the breadwinner. And I felt a heavy responsibility to take care of them and to have a job. Barbara felt the same way. So we felt that we had to have our jobs because we needed the money. And so we both put up with the sexism, and then later Barbara put up with ageism, and I put up with racism. And it's just the way it was. We both married nice Jewish boys. Actually, she married 3. And then we co-anchored with men who despised us. And we were both dumped after 2 years. So we had so much to commiserate about. I understood her. But she, it's not like we were best friends by any means. It's just that we had a lot in common. So I related to her. I could truly relate to her.
Well, I do remember her telling me that, toward the end, having her child was the greatest gift. And if she could have done everything over again, she would have spent more time with her child. She would have tried to have a child earlier. So what was motherhood like at 48?
Oh, yeah, you're right. I was 48. I was very close to, I turned 49 like 2 months after he was born. And, there's a reason why no one utters menopause and motherhood in the same sentence. But I loved his babyhood. We, Lisa, I think I said this in the book. We originally wanted to adopt an American boy and a Chinese baby girl. With the American boy, we'd have a mini Maury, and then with the Chinese girl, we'd have a mini me. And but then after we went through the sleepless nights, we said, we're done. And that was it. And so we were fine. And fortunately, Amy and David had Sydney and Miles, and so, you know, we have a great family. And Susan, Maury's oldest daughter, has a husband and a boy and a girl too. And they're all great kids.
Well, it's sort of serendipitous how it all came to be. But I understand that you really didn't understand the impact that you had on the Asian American community until someone named Connie Wang reached out to you. Someone named Connie Wang, who's in the audience tonight. There she is. Tell us about what happened when Connie Wang reached out to you.
She cold emailed me one day and said, I'm named after you. Get out of here. No. And so I said, we got to talk on the phone. And so we talked on the phone. And she said, now, I remember when we talked on the phone, this is what you told me, but you don't tell it the same as I do. Because this is the way I remembered it, because I took notes, just like a reporter does. But you know, I may be wrong, and please do correct me, but she told me on the phone that when she was 3 years old, she came from China with her parents. They settled in the Midwest. And they told her, you can pick, we need to give you an American name. And what name would you like? And she knew what she saw on television. And she said, Connie or Elmo. The result, what did she?
Also a Ninja Turtle option.
Oh, a Ninja Turtle option. I forgot about that. I didn't write that down. So please correct me if I'm wrong. So she became Connie. And then she's very smart. She went to UC Berkeley. And she's in the cafeteria, and somebody says, Connie. And since, you know, half of UC Berkeley is Asian, about half the room turns around. And she said, this is weird. And she was trying to get her email address at UC Berkeley, and there were so many Connies. And she, being a really smart, became a reporter. She worked for Refinery 29 when we spoke, and she said, there are untold numbers of women named Connie, and I suspect they're named after you. So she takes a deep dive and does an investigative journalistic report, and she says, yeah, this is what I've learned. And so she was trying to think of where she was going to place this story, and she's very aggressive. She called. No, I mean, she's like, no, in a good way.
Think of her namesake.
Yeah. What's that? Yeah, it's good. No, it's good. It's so good. So she contacts the New York Times, which is no small feat, seriously. And she gets approval to write a piece for the Sunday New York Times opinion section. The photo editor for that section is determined to find a Connie photographer, and she does. She finds Connie Chung Aramaki, and she flies her in from the West Coast, and she calls me and tries to gather as many Connies as she can in the New York area, puts them in a studio. I walk in, and it was the most glorious day of my life.
And we have a clip of Connie meeting some of those East Coast Connies.
It's so good to see you. Hi, Connie.
Hi. Nice to meet you.
How are you?
Finally, yeah.
Yeah. What is your last name?
Aramaki.
Armaki. Okay.
Yeah. But my real name's Chung, actually.
Get out.
My parents named me Connie Chung Aramaki, so I'd really be like you.
Yeah. You're Connie
Wang.
Wang. And you pronounce it Wang?
Yeah, I actually named myself after you.
You did?
Not my parents. I did.
You mean just
I
in your
admire you
crib?
so much.
You know? No. How did you do that?
Because you're an iconic person.
Oh my God.
And I admire female.
Oh my God. I know, me too. Really?
Yeah.
How old were you when you named
After
you?
college, I wanted to have some American name, and I didn't want to have Esther, Sarah. Yeah, I admire you so much.
Oh my God. No, you're gonna ruin my makeup.
Okay, quick, everybody laugh.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God.
Nice to meet you.
This is amazing. This is amazing.
It is. Thank you.
Oh my God.
It's confusing why you're named Connie. You know, when I at least when I was born, you know. But I realized what it means is, you know, your parents want you to work hard and like be brave and take chances. Yeah.
I did do that.
Yeah. So thank you.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you. Oh my God. It's too much. It's just too much. Hi, Jackie. How are you?
Who needs one?
Oh my gosh.
That really is, I think, a small fraction of the Connies throughout the country. I imagine those were just the East Coast Connies. We even have a West Coast Connie Chung here in this room. Not this Connie Chung, another Connie Chung. We have Connie Chung Jo, who's here. There she is. Connie runs the most extraordinary organization here in LA, Asian Americans Advancing Justice. And I really wonder how many Connies there are. And that article was called Generation Connie, right?
But Connie Wong maybe will tell us how many she thinks there are.
Connie Wong, how many Connies do you think there are?
Ooh, thousands? Just
thousands.
I think thousands.
Really? Really?
Yeah, when it comes to Connie Wangs, which is my name, it's impossible to find me on Google. When I Google my name, there's just, the first page is just a mess. I've never been able to get a Gmail account, Facebook account, any social media account. There's always a Connie Wang before me. So that's just my last name. So you can imagine every other iteration of every other Asian American last name, how many Connies there are. There's a lot of you. Yeah.
You really think there are thousands?
It is a noticeable blip in the database of names and stuff. So Connie was really popular in the 50s and 60s and then dropped severely in popularity. No one was named Connie until you were on TV, and then there's a little bump in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
Amazing, but not surprising at all, Connie. I mean, the impact that you've had on so many of us is truly inexplicable. Not only are there possibly thousands of Connies in America, there is a strain of weed called Connie Chung.
I mean,
and
I think it doesn't get better than that.
Well, it does. It does, because there is a drag queen who goes by Connie Chung, and he's here today.
He's here. Oh my God!
This is Mark Chung, and I wanted him to actually dress as Connie Chung, but he said it takes about a week to do so. So,
but you wear heels, right? I have. Yes, fabulous. I can't. And you wear makeup? Of course.
Oh, yes.
Of course.
And do you do it yourself? Okay.
All right. That is amazing. I never knew, that there was
the weed and the drag. It's just
I'm saying,
the inspiration knows no bounds.
No bounds. You can get a 5-pack pre-roll of. I saw it online for only $22.
It's a good
Doesn't
deal.
that sound like a bargain? I wouldn't know.
All right, we're going to segue to questions from the audience for Connie Chung.
Thank you to all of you who sent in questions. We'll have time for a few of them. David writes, you were a sensation when you arrived as a local anchor in LA. What was your life like then?
Well, I started off being very diligent, working hard, and wanted to continue burnishing my career as a political reporter. So when people like Carter and Kennedy and all these presidential candidates, Walter Mondale would come out to LA, I would cover them, and then I also covered other stories. So because I felt anchors who just come in, do the news, and go home were pretty darn lazy. So, but then I did a story on a doctor, and it was not flattering. He decided to put a tail on me, like an investigative private detective. And the private detective's office was raided by the police for reasons I don't know. And the Los Angeles Police Department called me up and said, just want you to know there's a file with your name because you were investigated by this private detective. But there's nothing there because you just go to work and you come home. and you never give parties. And you don't even go out on a Saturday night. And I said, this is ridiculous. Because I didn't want to go Hollywood. But then I decided, what the heck? I'm going to go out and have some fun. Actually, I just thought of it. Joanna, you were the first to tell me about Connie Chung weed. Now, everybody's looking at you, because she doesn't look like a pothead, right?
How did you find out about Connie Chung weed,
It was
Joanna?
one of your girlfriends, right? Yeah.
Sonia asks, celebrities like Marlon Brando and Warren Beatty fell in love with you. Can you tell us about that?
No. No, Warren Beatty was a political junkie, and he actually covered, he would go out on the road with George McGovern in 1972, but he was chasing every skirt, but there were very few skirts, covering McGovern. And also one time he brought his girlfriend, Julie Christie, and but he would always cause quite a stir, and his sister, Shirley MacLaine, would come too. And then, but I kept, no, you can charm me all you want, but I'm not going there. I'm a dutiful reporter, and it would be wrong for me to succumb to your advances. And then when I went to Hollywood, and after that private detective found that, I had a deadly boring life, I ran into Warren Beatty, and I said, okay. But I'm not going to say anything more. Marlon Brando had a Chinese fetish, an Asian fetish. He was truly disgusting. And he would call me at home and leave these interminable messages on, remember when we had answer machines with a tiny little cassette? And he would use up the whole freaking cassette. But I finally got an interview with him, and it was his first interview in 16 years. So it was...
it's a good thing you gave him your number.
But he didn't... It was a weird interview. It's on YouTube if you want to see it. So weird. You know, the best thing on YouTube, I think, is when I asked Bill Gates, I found out that he could jump over a chair from a standing position. It is so good. You got to see it. He really does it. Yeah, it's great.
Was that when he walked out of the interview?
Yes. But then when I interviewed him, I started asking him about gobbling up, small companies. He didn't like that, and he walked out. Barbara Walters used to make people cry. I made people walk out.
Jump over the chairs and make a beeline.
Yeah.
I'm just going to combine a couple questions. Veronica says, is there anything you would tell your younger self? And another question from Phil says, is there any advice you were given early in your career that you wish you had taken?
Oh. Well, Maury would actually always tell me, I would recommend doing this. And because I was so stubborn, I would do the opposite. And it was many times I have this, I'm a shoulda, coulda, woulda person. So I should have, I believe many times when Maury told me I should do this, and I didn't do it. He was mostly generally right. And I hate it when he's right.
Vicky asks, many Asian or immigrant daughters feel a sense of indebtedness to their parents, especially knowing the sacrifices made during their journey to America. How can our generation find a balance between meeting our parents' expectations and pursuing our own desires and identities?
Yeah, such a good question. It's so hard.
How did your parents feel about you pursuing media?
Oh, they loved it. They were very proud. And but there were these discriminatory moments. I would take them to the doctor. If I didn't take them, they wouldn't really get. They would be sort of, I don't understand you. I can't help you.
Sort of dismissed.
Yeah, very much dismissed. But if I took them, it was, Connie Chung's parents. And I was repulsed by that. I shouldn't enjoy, and they shouldn't enjoy a privilege just because I'm on television and they recognize my name. On the other hand, they were facing rampant racism because they both had heavy accents, and particularly my mother. And she was hard to understand. And people would look at her sideways, and I felt terrible for her. And I felt the need to translate. My father his English was better, and really quite good, and he could, write, but it was still very challenging. So I don't know. It's hard to balance what we know we grew up with, the familial obligations that we have as Asian children. But I'm from a different era, and so I think it's different from today's women and Asian children, because, for instance, I see all these disparate groups, whether it's different races, Chinese, Japanese, Vietnamese, Pacific Islanders, everyone is coming together and fighting together under Connie Chung Jo's guidance and her leadership. She's a lawyer and she's just brilliant. And she's brought together so many people to fight Asian hate and justice for Asians. you know, I admire her immensely because of the work that she does. I think one thing, if I may, studies show that this particular election and the last one in 2016, the Asian American Pacific Islander voting bloc made the difference in tipping the balance in key states like Georgia and Arizona and
Nevada.
Yes, you're so good. And so it's the same this year. So the old school Asian people are reluctant many times to vote, but it's imperative that Asians vote because we do have a voice. And today, we're joining together with a powerful voice. We will, I mean, you can't imagine.
As you stood there amidst that sea of men so many years ago, could you have ever imagined that an Asian black woman would be running for the highest office in the land?
It's unfathomable, truly. I do have something in common with one of the candidates. I too am balding, and I have to do the comb over, you know? And the other thing that I have in common is that he wears a lot of makeup, and I wear a lot of makeup, and I know he should not use Suntone because it makes him look orange. And you don't use Suntone, do you? No. See? All Connie Chungs know. Suntone makes you look orange, and you don't want to look orange. So I would strongly recommend that he get a better foundation.
Antonia writes, Roberta Flack and Yoko Ono were your neighbors. What was that like?
Who said that?
A lady named Antonia asked that question.
I'll talk to you later. Okay, next.
Susan says, lots of things have changed for women in the news business, but the beauty standard, not so much.
Right.
Would you comment on that?
I couldn't agree. You know, when I was in the news business, you know, we had to look really quite presentable, and the men were allowed to be bald, fat, and ugly. And now
nothing's changed.
Yeah, nothing's changed, and I think viewers do pick apart what we're wearing, what our hair looks like. I mean, because I'm not in the air anymore, but if I were, they would say, God, she looks so old. You know, you can't have somebody that old. And HD TV is pretty cruel on a woman who is older. So it really hasn't changed.
Well, Connie, you are lucky because, as we all know, Asian don't raisin. So that certainly applies to you. Connie Chung, on behalf of your adoring fans, thank you so much for sharing part of your extraordinary life with us and cracking us up while at it. Thank you so much for
Lisa,
being here tonight.
Can I just say, Lisa, you know what? Because of this book, I've done a lot of interviews, and Lisa, you know what? Shame on all the people who read their questions. You'd never even looked at your piece of paper.
I could sit here for hours and listen to you. My stomach would hurt, my belly would hurt from laughing so much. But thank you, Connie.
Love you, Lisa.
Love you.
Always have. No,
thank you.
Thank you.